Hey ladies and gents, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm Harry, and today I'm going to be doing a Q&A. So recently a few of you were asking me a few questions on Instagram and also some comments on YouTube, and I love to hear all of the questions that you might have and a lot of the input that you're always suggesting. And I thought today's episode, it would be good to go over some of those questions and I can react to some of them the best that I can. So we'll start off with this one from Alice C. And this says, hey, thanks for posting. Since you've been feeling better, have you encountered reinfection of COVID? Did that set you back? And if so, how bad? Thank you. So I don't know for sure if I was reinfected with COVID over the last 3-4 years. I have an instinct that I probably was, although I did kind of stop testing for it because I just kind of took the approach that, look, I'm going to get ill again at points, whether it be flu, whether it be COVID or other illnesses like that. And I kind of took the impression of, regardless of what happens and whether, what I get ill with, the approach remains the same, right? So for me, I've learned the hard way that when I am ill, I will take time to rest properly, to make sure I'm eating well, to hydrate properly, and not overly push myself through like I was doing before and very much like I was doing when I got COVID. And I think this is very common for a lot of people who did get some kind of post-viral condition, whether it be chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID. I think it's very common that a lot of us were pushing and pushing. Maybe you were drinking too much, going out too much, studying too much, training too much at the time of your illness. And then that led to this kind of propagation of symptoms. So yes, I think I probably have been affected. I've certainly been affected with some kind of illnesses, and it did set me back a couple of weeks or so, but I made sure to stay calm and just take it as it comes, take it on the chin and rest properly, make sure that I was hydrating myself, eating well, and then slowly phase my return back to normal life. So yeah, that's been my approach. Second question is, could you explain a bit more what real deconditioning is versus what people with ME/long COVID experience? A nurse told me that I am deconditioned and should desensitize myself or something like this. Yeah, so this is a really frustrating one, especially if you're somebody who is an athlete and you know what it is like to be really deconditioned. So I broke my ankle a few years back. I was training in judo and I broke my ankle and I had to have surgery on it. And obviously I was out of training for a good 6 to 8 months, something like that. And for the majority of that time, especially at the beginning, I couldn't do anything. So I literally couldn't move. I had my leg propped up all day and I became very, very deconditioned. And when I first got back to doing some kind of cardio, I felt horrendous. I felt so out of shape. I remember my judo coach, he was yelling at me and telling me how fat I was and how out of shape I was. And that was the case. So I was deconditioned. And deconditioning feels like you're severely, severely unfit. But you go home at the end of the day, you feel that normal sense of heavy fatigue because you've obviously done a tough training session when you haven't done one in a while. And then the next day you woke up and maybe you feel sore, but you feel normal. And then the next day you train again and you feel terrible, but you slowly, slowly improve and you build up this kind of conditioning. So it's essentially just a lack of fitness. And obviously people who have been bedbound for many, many months, whether it be through a different illness or something along those terms, will be very deconditioned. And there will be with certain people who have chronic fatigue syndrome who are bedbound in that way. They haven't moved in any kind of degree in months or years. There will be an element of deconditioning there, but that is not the key thing that is at play. And that is just shown by how the body is reacting to when it is actually exercising. So when somebody like that or somebody with these post-viral fatigues, syndromes and have post-exertional malaise, which is a symptom, it's not normal deconditioning. And the feeling that you get when you do train isn't normal. It's not a normal kind of fatigue, but it is instead this kind of illness, this kind of sickness that it doesn't matter how unfit or how out of shape you are, it's not normal. So there's a very stark difference between the two. I've put on 10 kilo because I can't train anymore due to PEM. Anything that you would recommend? So my first point here would be that you don't want to be triggering any post-exertional malaise. And for those that aren't aware, that is that reaction that I was talking about in the previous question, where you get this almost ill-like reaction following due too much exercise. So first of all, you don't want to be going through this boom and bust cycle. And I certainly found that a year or so back, I was really overly pushing it with my training. Blessed to be in a position where I could do some stuff, but I still wasn't feeling right. And I was overdoing it and pushing this limit and having this boom and bust cycle, which was really not good. So first of all, don't be pushing yourself to the point where you're having massive perpetual crashes. That being said, I do think that having some degree of gentle movement has been a big part of my recovery and me getting a lot better. So for me, I always scaled it back to where I was at that current moment. So at the beginning, I would do some gentle stretching, generally kind of lying down and keeping it very chilled. And then I would incrementally add more and more difficulty onto that. So I'd maybe do some more sort of flowy yoga, and then maybe do some light gym work. But again, trying, not always successfully, certainly in my case, to stay within some kind of range. But in terms of muscle mass, I think one of the best things for me in terms of retaining muscle mass has been doing some kind of yoga, because yoga is low impact. So it's not like judo or going to the gym. It's very low impact. You can control your breathing throughout, but your muscles are under tension. And yeah, for those of you who think, like I did before, I was like, yoga, that seems like a bit of a joke. Try it. It's tough. And yeah, that's been one of the best things for me in terms of retaining muscle mass. And then as I've gradually introduced gym work again, I try and just do, certainly initially, I would try and just do relatively light stuff, more maintenance. And I'm quite fortunate to have been in the position that I trained a lot, up until I was 22, and I've maintained, even whilst I was ill, a good degree of training. Not anywhere like what I would want to be, but able to move and able to keep on top of stuff. So yeah, my advice would be doing exercise where you can, trying to do low impact sports like yoga, and yeah, those are probably my two best tips. Appreciate your self-awareness. I wonder if you'd get an honest answer from doctors as to why they have that bias. Always fascinates / infuriates me. Would love to know where it stems from. So this is regarding, I believe, a video that I put out around doctors not necessarily being aware of conditions like long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome. And I think a lot of it does come from an inability to visualize what is going on. And I've said that many times before. I think it's very easy to jump on doctors and say, they're gaslighting and they simply don't care about me. And whilst I'm sure there's certain experiences that are very much like that, I think we have to consider the position that they're in, because they're obviously struggling anyway. They're quite overworked. They have a lot of patients to see, a lot of people to get through, a lot of patients who will be kind of exaggerating stuff. So when they run all the tests on you, they run everything, and nothing comes up in your examinations, then for them it's very difficult, because they're like, what do I do? And whilst we do need better awareness and better training around chronic illnesses, so that they can then point you better in direction of a specialist, I think it is very difficult for them. But that being said, I think if you are aware that there is something wrong with you, and I had that, I was like, very much at the beginning, the doctors would say, maybe you just have anxiety. I'm like, yeah, that is not the case. There's something like fundamentally just wrong. And I had to push for that. So I would keep pushing to get certain scans, push to see certain specialists. So you do have to, unfortunately, take action into your own hands and push forward as much as you can. But yeah, it is a tricky one, and I can understand a lot of people's frustrations. What did you do? How is your diet now? Do you drink? Do you eat any inflammatory foods? So I've spoken about this before, and I've been through an endless amount of diets. So I've done vegan, I've done keto, vegetarian, the carnivore diet, paleo. I've done all sorts of different diets. I've been super strict and then super lax. And for me, and from speaking to the people who I know who have recovered, the majority of them don't seem to suggest that diet is a fundamental key to their recovery. Now, does that mean that it's not important at all? Of course not. I think having a generally healthy diet where you're providing your body with all the nutrients that it needs is very important and will lead you to feel better. But from everyone that I've spoken to and from most of the stuff that I see in terms of recovery stories, diet can very easily seem like this is the one stop shop overall core. You have the cure. You have to do vegan, you have to do whatever it is. And I think for most of the people that I've seen who've recovered, that isn't necessarily the case. That being said, what I do try and do is eat relatively healthy and relatively clean to ensure that my body has the adequate nutrients. So for me, that typically looks like a fast until midday. I usually break that fast with some kind of salad with lots of seeds and stuff, and fresh fish or maybe some chicken. And then later on in the day, I'll usually have a snack like Greek yogurt, berries, something like that. And then in the evening, I will have my bigger meal where I'll have some kind of carbohydrate, whether it be potatoes or rice. I'll have some chicken, some beef, whatever, some kind of lean meat. And then I will quite often have a dessert because I do have a sweet tooth. And I try and keep it balanced. I don't think it's very sustainable if I'm super, when I've gone through periods where I'm just obsessed with my diet, I don't think it helps me. And yeah, I try and avoid things that, like processed, ultra processed foods, but generally I try and eat relatively clean. And in terms of drinking, I don't really drink anymore. I used to be a big fan of going out for a pint with the boys, but yeah, sadly I don't usually drink that much now, and I feel better for it. I feel like it definitely clouds my judgment, and I do feel better for not having drunk. But I will have a pint every now and again, a social drink, and yeah, I don't try and obsess about excluding everything and certain things from my diet. 2.5 years later and fully recovered. I love seeing comments like this, and this is really where I'm trying to focus the direction of this channel in terms of recovery, talking about things that have worked for me and helped me to get to a position where I'm at now, and also sharing the experiences of other people who have been where we all are or have been and are at a position that we would like to get to. And there is no shortage of horrible studies and scary news out there and horror stories, and I don't feel the need to add any more to that. Not to say that I don't enjoy looking at the latest research and sharing and having conversations with people who are working to find out more about this illness. I totally get that, and I will continue to share as much of that as possible. But I really want to try and focus this on a more positive light, because when I speak to people who have recovered, I know that it makes me feel so much better. It makes me feel so much more positive. And I know, especially at the beginning when I got lost in the Facebook groups and all I would see is, I've been ill for 17 years, I'll never recover. And just seeing this, it would make me so miserable. And I know a lot of people who follow this channel also are in a similar boat and want to try and escape that. And I want to try and put out as much positive content there as possible, because I've done a few recovery stories before, and it's amazing to see people who have been there and got to where we all want to go. And I find those sort of conversations especially inspiring. So more of those to come, and hopefully more comments like this to come as well. I really needed to see this. Was there anything you found that helped in particular? Could use all the help and advice I can get. So I've had a multitude of things that I think have helped me get to where I am now, and I feel pretty good. I'm maybe not quite there, but generally I have a very good quality of life. I do exercise, I work, I do everything that I would want to, and if I had to pinpoint a few things that I think have really helped along the way, I will outline them now. So the first was niacin, and that was a supplement that I took a lot at the very beginning, and I do feel like it helps to give me a little bit more energy and to alleviate some of the fatigue. I've spoken about that a fair bit before. I don't think obsessing over supplements is particularly useful. I used to take, and this is very common with a lot of people with long COVID, is I used to take about 30, 40, however many supplements I was rattling. And you become obsessed. You spend hundreds, if not thousands a month on different supplements because there's this one pill that maybe might get you over the line. And I think for most of the people I've spoken to who have recovered, that isn't the case. But niacin was one that seemed to really help. And then there's a few basic supplements that I will take on a daily basis, like vitamin D, a multivitamin, magnesium, and they're kind of general supplements that help you maintain a good level of health. The second thing that I think has helped me has been, in my opinion, moving to some degree. So having some part of it was the fact that I was never totally bedbound. Like many people, I was blessed to not be in that position, but I did really struggle, and any kind of movement would trigger severe post-exertional malaise. And what I found was doing some degree of movement, whether it be yin yoga, a gentle kind of stretch out or gym workout, doing something helped me, and incrementing that, I think, built a little bit of kind of autonomic tolerance, I think is the word. And yeah, that was something that I think has really benefited me and allowed me also not to lose too much in terms of any strength and actual deconditioning, because there is an element to which deconditioning contributes. Obviously, it's only a very small amount, as I mentioned earlier, but that was something that really helped me as well. And then the third thing that I think has been really helpful is doing things to regulate my autonomic nervous system. So for me, this looks like cold showers, using it's called a vagus nerve stimulator. I use it by NeuroSim, and I basically plug that in, and I think it kind of helps to relax and stimulate the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is something that helps your rest and digest system, so it helps you to stay in a more calm and relaxed state. So cold therapy, I have a cold shower every morning and every afternoon usually. And again, I'm not one of these productivity gurus who is like, you have to have a cold shower to make 10K a month. I do it purely because it literally helps me feel better. So yeah, that's been massively beneficial. Breath work, doing box breathing, so 4 breaths in, hold it, 4 breaths out. Lots of variations of that, again, helps to regulate your autonomic nervous system. Meditation as well is a huge one. And all of these things, little by little, help you to remain in a more relaxed and rest and digest state, which I think helps you to recover. And the final thing that I will talk about is the mind-body stuff. So the kind of brain training. And I've received a lot of flack for this. Many people have been very critical about me talking about this and how much it's helped me. I know it's helped a lot of other people as well. For some people, not so much, but for me, it's been probably the biggest needle mover in feeling better. And yeah, there's a ton of heat that I'll get for saying that, but it is honest. It's my honest experience with that. Not the case for everyone, and I have always been very skeptical of it because I'm a very scientifically minded individual. I studied physics. I always wanted things to make logical sense and to be visible, and you can measure it, and good solid science. And there was a paper that I've talked about a lot, which there's a book written on it called The Way Out by Alan Gordon, and it goes into a study on chronic back pain and how using these mind, body, and visualization and interrupting these pain signals, using that technique can actually change the structure of the brain. So not just help you to decrease the level of pain, but it can actively help to change areas within your brain that are responsible for detecting these pain signals. So seeing that study, which I will link below, that really opened my eyes to, okay, well, if maybe this can change the structure of the brain for chronic pain. Obviously, a slightly different condition. Maybe it can have some benefits for me as well. And it really has been. It's been one of the biggest needle movers for me. And I know for a lot of other people, they have said it's been fundamental for their recovery. So, yeah, I do get a lot of stick for that, and I will get a lot of shit for saying that here. But I am in no way trying to diminish or suggest that the condition is psychosomatic. But for me, it's been a huge needle mover, and yeah, for many others too. Nothing against charity funding, but we need funding worth billions. In my opinion, there is no hope for real working treatments if there is no political will to change something. People and economics are suffering from MECFS/long COVID. So my first point with this is that, yes, I certainly agree with the economics point, and that is an avenue that when we're looking at research and developing an understanding of the illness, we really need to target the economic side, because there is only so far that sympathy can go when it comes to people and governments being aware of the condition. People are only so interested in hearing a sob story, right? But when we start talking about economics and the amount that is affecting the GDP, how that will affect regular people's lives, the workplace, etc., then we start to see proper change. And so that's why I've been advocating for pushing more on the economic and societal impact as opposed to just on the sympathy side. So that's the first point. So in response to the question regarding the charity funding, so I totally agree in terms of making big changes, in terms of developing treatments and understanding research better. You do need huge chunks of funding. And at the moment, we kind of have, I think it's a £17 million grant from the government, so not particularly huge amounts. But this is where the charity sector actually can be involved. So currently, I did a video on this very recently, and the MECFS charities are very well intentioned and doing a really good effort with trying to raise awareness, but they're not particularly good at raising funds. And if we compare this to other charities like Parkinson's or MND, they raise a ton of money. They raise, I think Parkinson's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was something like 65 million a year. And that is a disease that affects less people than chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID. So the reason that they are able to do this is because they are run like a business, and they are incredibly professional as an outfit. So you look at their website, it's super nice, its UI. When you sign up to become a donator, you receive a little welcome pack, how to get other people involved, etc. And it's really nice. It's done in a really good way, and that's no surprise, because they're then able to raise a ton of funds and put all of this money towards research projects. And not only that, but having a really good and solid charitable organization like that then also allows you to have more weight and more authority when you're lobbying within governments. Because if the Parkinson's Foundation go to government, the government can see that they are a serious outfit. They have a professional board of directors, they raise millions and millions every year, and they are likely to go to them for advice. And the same could be done for chronic fatigue syndrome, but we do need to make it more professional and overcome the stigma as well, which Mind have done, with mental health. So there's no reason that we can't do that as well. Why are some countries way ahead on DLI with long COVID? In terms of the country discrepancy, I'm kind of unsure. I think certain countries, I know certainly in Germany, I believe that they have more existing research when it comes to chronic fatigue syndrome and syndromes like that. But a lot of countries, it kind of has fallen by the wayside. But I totally agree that having a collaboration and a joint effort amongst different countries will massively help to develop a better long-term outcome. And then also it's very important to remember that this will need to be, the research and any help that comes as a result of the research needs to be distributed amongst all countries as well, because this is an issue across Europe, but also across Americas, in Africa, the Middle East, wherever. So for sure, I think combining resources and collaborating, and there are a few organizations who I believe are doing this. I think Polybio and Open ME Association, I believe. I think they are collaborating with different researchers from around the globe, and there's a few good organizations that are popping up. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time. But yeah, I totally agree. I think the international community needs to collaborate, and that's how we'll see more stuff getting done. Okay, ladies and gents, that is everything for today. I hope that Q&A was useful. Like I said, I love to hear any questions that you guys have, and it's really great to see you engaging. In terms of stuff that's coming up on the channel soon, so I've got some more recovery stories coming, so stay tuned for those because they're going to be really, really exciting. I'm also going to look at doing some other kind of style of videos as well. I'd like to delve into some of my other interests as well, so some other stuff around health, philosophy, because yeah, sometimes I don't want to just talk about long COVID all the time. But yeah, like I said, I really, really appreciate any engagement that you guys have. I'm always keen to hear any feedback that you have, so please leave that in the comments. And yeah, any further questions that you'd like answering or ideas for future videos, please let me know in the comments as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.